Chapter 2. News for Hurricane, Part 1. It started the day the letter from Aunt Gloria arrived. Aunt Gloria is Mum's sister. Mum calls her Glow, and Kat calls her Auntie Glow. Dad calls her Hurricane Gloria because she always leaves a trail of devastation in her wake. I asked him what this meant. Did it mean she was clumsy like I am? He said it wasn't so much things that she upset, which wouldn't be so bad, but people and emotions. Doesn't that mean she's evil? I asked. Dad said no, she didn't do it on purpose, so no, she wasn't evil. She was just a handful. I asked him what being a handful meant, and he said it meant being larger than life. When I tried to ask what being larger than life meant, he put his hand on my shoulder. Not now, Ted, he said. The morning Aunt Gloria's letter came was the same as any other. I heard the post drop as usual on the doormat. I was on Shreddy number 3. And the radio forecast was saying it was set fair, but with a risk of showers in the southeast. Kat was eating toast standing up, wriggling. It wasn't that she had fleas, although that's what she looked like. She was listening to her weirdo music on headphones, which meant she wouldn't hear the weather and wouldn't wear a coat or bring her umbrella to school, which meant that she would get wet and I wouldn't. This was good. Dad was hopping around in one sock, complaining about how the washing machine had eaten all his socks and he was late. Mum was looking through the laundry bag for a spare. Ted, get the post, Mum said. She was in her nurse's uniform, and even though I know when her words come out short and sharp like that, you do what she asks, even though I hate leaving my shreddies to turn to mush. I came back with 6 envelopes. Kat saw me and snatched them off me and picked out a big brown envelope and a small white one. I could see our school emblem on the white one. It's like a squashed up X, and over it's a bishop's hat, which is called a mitre. Kat tried to hide it behind a big brown envelope, but Mum saw her. Not so fast, Katrina, Mum said. When Mum calls Kat Katrina, you know trouble's coming. Kat's lips pressed up tight. She handed over the post, all items except the brown envelope, which she held up for all to see that it was addressed to her, Katrina Spark. She opened it and a catalogue came out. It was called Hair Flare. She walked over to the door, head nodding. I ate Shreddies number 7 through 17. Dad started humming the theme of Laurel and Hardy, his favourite thing to watch on TV. He'd got the other sock on, was buttering toast, and his hair stood on end, and Mum would have said he looked the spit of Stan. The spit is another way to say exactly like, but don't ask me why. Anyway, Stan has brown hair, and Dad's hair's fair, like mine, so he doesn't look exactly like Stan at all. Katrina! Mum bellowed. The 18th Shreddy fell off my spoon. What? This letter from your school? What letter from my school? The letter, the one you tried to hide. What about it? It says you were missing last week without a sick note, last Tuesday. Oh, yeah. Well, what? Well, where were you? She was AWOL, Mum, I suggested. Kat and Mum stared at me. AWOL, like in the army, I explained. Absent without leave. Get stuffed, you creep, Kat hissed. She went out and slammed the door after her. The radio programme switched back to the news. Turn that thing off, Ted, Mum said. I fiddled with the knob, but she pulled the plug out of the socket instead. There was silence. I heard Dad munching some toast. She's going off the rails, Mum said to Dad. OK, so where we're up to there, can you, in your mind or on some paper, write down what you think Kat was doing instead of going to school on Tuesday? And be ready for part 2. She's going off the rails, Ben, Mum said to Dad. Off the rails, I repeated, thinking of train accidents. I suppose Mum was saying something about Katrina being AWOL. Maybe off the rails was another way of saying skiving, which means not going to school when you should. But I didn't dare check, not with Mum in that mood. Off the rails and nobody cares, she said. I used to bunk off at her age, Dad said. I'd spend my day riding buses and smoking fags in the park. My 20th Shreddy nearly went down the wrong way. The thought of Dad with a cigarette in hand was very strange. He never smokes now. Dad tapped Mum's shoulder, and when she looked up at him, he kissed her on the forehead. It gave off a funny squeak that nearly put me off the rest of my Shreddies. Let's discuss it tonight, Faith. I've got to run. There's a meeting about blowing up the barracks. Mum's lips went up a bit. OK, love, later. I should explain here that Dad's not a terrorist who goes around blowing up the places where soldiers live. He's a demolition expert, and the barracks is the local name for Barrington Heights, the tallest tower block in our South London borough. It used to be where people who were socially excluded lived. Being socially excluded is a little bit like being excluded from school. Except, instead of a head teacher telling you have to leave, it's more like everybody else in the rest of society acts like you don't exist. And you end up with all the other people who are being ignored. And so you're angry that society is treating you like that, so you take drugs and shoplift and form gangs for revenge. And the people in Barrington Heights used to do all those things. Dad said it was not the building was bad. It was not the people that were bad to begin with. He said the building was sick and made them sick too, a bit like a virus. So he and the council had decided to move them to new homes and blow up the building and start again. Dad got his jacket on. He said goodbye, Ted, to me and went out. Then Mum sat down again and went through the rest of the post. She got to the last piece, a pale lilac envelope. I saw her holding it to her nose and sniffing it as if it was edible. Then she smiled. Her lips went right up, but her eyes went watery. This meant she was sad and happy at the same time. Glory be, she whispered. She opened it and read what it was like inside. I ate my last 3 shreddies, numbers 35 through 37. She put down the lilac sheet of paper and ruffled the top of my head, a thing she does sometimes which makes my hand shake itself out. Hold tight, Ted, she said. A hurricane's coming. No, it isn't, I said. We're moving into a large anticyclone. I'm a meteorologist, or I will be when I grow up, so I know. Hurricanes die out halfway across the Atlantic. They rarely hit Britain. Even the one in 1987 wasn't technically a hurricane. The weatherman, called Michael Fish, who's famous for getting it wrong, actually got it right. It was only a bad storm, and it had no name. A real hurricane's always given a name, like Hannah, which gusted up to 160 miles an hour in 1957, or Hugo, which flattened half of South Carolina in the USA in 1989, or Hurricane Katrina, a Category 5 storm which devastated New Orleans in 2005. I'm sure it's no coincidence that one of the most catastrophic storms of all time has the same name as my sister. I didn't mean it literally, Mum said, whisking my empty cereal bowl away from me. It's Hurricane Gloria who's on her way. My sister, remember? She's coming to visit us along with her son, Salim. The ones who live in Manchester? That's right. It's been more than 5 years since we saw them, Ted. I just don't know where the time's gone. It sounded like she thought time was something that comes and goes like the weather. I shook my head. No, Mum, I explained. Time doesn't go anywhere. It does in this house, Ted. Down a bloody black hole. I blinked at her, trying to figure out if she might have a point. She laughed and said she was joking and ruffled my hair again. Go on, Ted, off to school with you. So I went on my zigzag way across the common, thinking about time, black holes, Einstein's theory of relativity, and storm warnings. I imagined Hurricane Gloria building up a force as it drew nearer, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. My thoughts were so good that I nearly ended up walking into the pond on the wrong side of the common, and got to school just on time. Down a black hole, I said to myself, as I ran across the playground. My hand shook itself out. Down a bloody black hole. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 2. So, what we're going to think about then is there's 3 vocabulary words to look for. Devastation, demolition, and edible. Then you can do some answering of questions. What does Mum smile at? Why does Mum smile at the letter? What are your first impressions of Ted? Write down how you think other people would describe him. That's it for now.